Alright, so I'm going to be explaining the revised penal code from Articles 2 to 11. It's going to be per, per article per video. So to start off, let's start with Article 2, which is the application of its provision. Except as provided in the treaties and laws of preferential application, the provision of this code shall be enforced not only within the Philippine archipelago, including its atmosphere, its internal waters, and maritime zone, but also outside of its jurisdiction against those who should commit an offense while on a Philippine ship or airship, should forge or counterfeit any coin or currency notes of the Philippine Islands, or obligations and securities issued by the government of the Philippine Islands. Number 3, should be liable for acts connected with the introduction into these islands of the obligation and securities mentioned in the preceding chapter. Number 4, while being public officers or employees should commit an offense in the exercise of their function, or should commit any acts of any of the crimes against national security and the law of nations defined in Title 1, Book 2 of this code. Now, Article 2 specifically talks about the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the revised penal code. It basically, when it talks about Article 2 of the revised penal code talks about the jurisdiction of the revised penal code within and outside, or within the jurisdiction and outside of the jurisdiction of the Philippines, of the Philippine Islands, or the Philippine archipelago. Now, to start with, let's go with paragraph 1, which states that should commit any offense while on a Philippine ship or airship. Now, with regards to this, it's about commercial ships, commercial Philippine ship or airship. It's not. Philippine ship or airship is not the, basically it's not the nationality of the owner of the ship, but rather it's the registration, or on what country that ship or airship is registered. Now, for number 2, for paragraph 2 and 3, they're basically the same. Paragraph 2 is specific on forging and counterfeiting Philippine coins and currency notes. Now, for that one, for public policy and economic stability, any person, whether you're anywhere outside of the country, who will forge or counterfeit any coin or currency notes of the Philippine Islands or obligations and securities, or when they're caught in the act of forging or counterfeiting, or they're found to be committing the act, they can be triable within the Philippine courts. Now, for number 3, it's the introduction of these obligations and securities of the Philippine Islands. They basically they introduce, they try to inculcate, or they try to enter into, basically trying to forge, or they are introducing on forging or counterfeiting Philippine notes or Philippine obligations and securities. For number 4, it's also specific for public officers and employees which are outside of the Philippines, or outside of the country, which commits an offense in, basically they said, in the exercise of their function. So when that public officer or employee does or commits an offense or commits a crime outside of the country within the jurisdiction of his function, let's say a malversation of funds, or bribery. Now, those will be covered with Article 2. Now, if ever public officers or employees did or committed crimes of murder or rape on that country, basically the penal code of that country would or is will be used for trying that public officer, not the penal code of the Philippines, since the act was done on, or the heinous crime was done outside the jurisdiction of the Philippines. Number 5, it should commit any crimes against national security and the law of nations. Basically, it's treason and espionage. So they're trying to induce induce war, trying to go against the government. Whether they're outside of the country, they're trying to instigate war or espionage, or trying to flee to enemy states. Then they can be triable within the Philippine courts. But that's enough for Article 2, and let's move on to the next video, which will be Title 1, the felonies and circumstances which affect criminal liability. So on the next video, it's going to be Article 3, which will be acts and omissions punishable by law or felonies. So I'll be signing off this one, and I'll be moving on to another one.